Look, when the Galactic Coalition Space Force calls you at 3 in the morning and says they need you on a battleship in orbit within the hour, you know someone has really screwed up. My name is Marcus Webb, and I'm what you might call a problem solver. The military prefers the term civilian contractor, which is their polite way of saying the guy we call when our own engineers can't figure out why the billion-credit equipment is making weird noises. I showed up at the shuttle bay wearing cargo shorts, a faded t-shirt that said, "I void warranties for a living," and carrying my lucky thermos full of coffee that could probably strip paint. The security officer took one look at me and actually checked his tablet 3 times to make sure I was supposed to be there. "Marcus Webb reporting as requested," I said, taking a long sip of coffee. "Where's the fire?" "There is no fire, sir. You're being transported to the GCS Valiant." I was speaking metaphorically, though give it time. There's usually a fire. The shuttle ride up was uncomfortable, mostly because the pilot kept giving me nervous looks like I was carrying a bomb instead of a toolbox held together with duct tape and false hope. When we docked with the Valiant, I was immediately escorted to the bridge, where I got my first look at Captain Helena Voss. She was exactly what you'd expect from a military captain. Tall, stern, with a haircut that could cut glass and a stare that probably made ensigns cry. She looked at me the way you'd look at something you found stuck to your shoe. "You're the engineer?" she asked, her voice flat with disappointment. I prefer the term miracle worker, but sure, let's go with engineer. "Mr. Webb, this is a military vessel. We have protocols." "And I have coffee," I replied, raising my thermos. "One of us is going to be more useful today. I'll give you one guess which." Commander Rick Dalton, who was standing next to her looking like he'd been born in that uniform and would probably be buried in it, made a noise that sounded like a pressure valve releasing. "Captain, I must protest. This man is clearly not taking our situation seriously." "Your situation being what exactly?" I asked, because your distress call was refreshingly vague. "Something about needing someone who can think outside the box?" Captain Voss exchanged a glance with Dalton before sighing. "We're on patrol near the Krellian border. Intelligence suggests they're planning something, and we need all systems at peak performance. Our chief engineer, Torres, said you once fixed a cargo hauler's engine using nothing but spare parts and stubbornness." "And duct tape," I added. "Never forget the duct tape." A younger officer, Lieutenant Amy Cho, stepped forward with barely concealed excitement in her eyes. "You're the Marcus Webb? The guy who rewired the Mars station cooling system using coffee filters?" "The very same, though I prefer to remember my work with the Shanghai orbital platform. Did you know you can use rubber bands as makeshift insulation in a pinch?" "I absolutely did not know that, and I hope I never need to," Captain Voss said. "Listen, Mr. Webb, this is probably just a routine patrol. We brought you up here as a precaution. Torres wanted a second opinion on some minor fluctuations in the plasma conduits." I was about to make a joke about how nothing involving plasma conduits is ever minor when the bridge lights flickered. Then the alarm started blaring, which is never a good sign. "Captain, we have multiple contacts dropping out of FTL," an officer at the sensor station called out. "It's a Krellian war fleet, 18 ships including a flagship-class dreadnought." Captain Voss's expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten. "Battle stations, all hands to combat positions." I took another sip of coffee. "So, about that routine patrol? You know what they don't tell you about space battles? They're loud. Incredibly, impossibly loud." The Valiant shuddered as the first wave of Krellian plasma fire hammered into our shields, and every console on the bridge started screaming different warnings in a cacophony that made my hangover from last week feel like a pleasant memory. "Return fire," Captain Voss ordered, calm as if she was ordering lunch. "Target their lead destroyers, evasive pattern Delta 7. The ship banked hard, and I grabbed onto the nearest railing to avoid becoming a human projectile. My coffee sloshed but didn't spill, which I took as a good omen. Commander Dalton was barking orders at various stations while Lieutenant Cho coordinated the weapon systems with the kind of efficiency that comes from way too many drills. Then things went from bad to, oh no, very quickly. A Krellian plasma torpedo slipped through our shields during a gap in coverage and slammed directly into our port side. The explosion was close enough that I felt it through the deck plating. Half the bridge consoles went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, and somewhere below us, something very expensive made a sound like a dying whale. "Damage report," Voss snapped. "Primary power systems offline," an officer reported, his voice climbing an octave. "Backup generators 1 through 4 are not responding. Weapons systems down. Shields at 15% and falling." "Engineering report," static answered her. Then a panicked voice came through. "Bridge, this is engineering. We've got plasma conduits melting on decks 7 through 9. Chief Torres is down. Repeat, Chief is down. Unconscious. We need medical, and we need someone who knows what they're doing because nothing down here makes sense anymore." Everyone on the bridge turned to look at me. I was still holding my coffee. "Well," I said, "this is awkward. I'm going to need that to go." Captain Voss pointed at me. "Lieutenant Cho, take him to engineering. Webb, I don't care how you do it, but get my power back online. We've got maybe 10 minutes before those Krellians blow us into atoms." "No pressure then," I muttered, following Cho toward the elevator. "Just save a multi-billion credit warship with a crew of 800 people while being shot at by aliens. It's fine. This is fine." The trip down to engineering was a carnival ride through hell. The ship was still taking fire. Alarms were screaming, and crew members were running in every direction doing the organized chaos dance that military training probably made look more coordinated than it actually was. When we reached engineering, I understood why Torres was unconscious. The main control console had exploded, sending shrapnel everywhere. The chief engineer was being carried out on a stretcher, and the remaining engineers looked at me with the desperate hope of people who were fresh out of ideas. "Okay," I said, setting down my toolbox and surveying the damage. "Who wants to tell me what happened?" A young engineer with singed eyebrows stepped forward. "The Krellian weapons are using some kind of plasma frequency we've never seen. It's interacting with our power grid in ways that don't make sense. The quantum core is destabilizing, and if we don't regulate it in the next 8 minutes, we're going to have a containment breach." "Which means?" "Which means the ship explodes, sir." "Stop calling me sir. I work for a living." I moved to the primary systems display and started running diagnostics. The data was ugly. The plasma conduits weren't just melting, they were degrading at an exponential rate. The quantum core, which powered everything on the ship, was cycling through temperature fluctuations that should have been impossible. Lieutenant Cho stood next to me watching the data scroll past. "Can you fix this?" "Define fix," I said, already formulating a plan that was 30% engineering, 20% physics, and 50% pure insanity. "I can probably keep us from exploding. The rest is going to get creative." "Creative how?" I turned to the assembled engineers. "I need duct tape. Industrial grade if you have it. I also need copper wire, preferably from something we don't need right now. And someone bring me the biggest wrench you can find." One of the engineers blinked at me. "Sir, Mr. Webb, those items aren't going to help with quantum core stabilization." "They're not going to hurt either, trust me, I've done this before." I paused. "Well, not exactly this, but similar. There was this one time on a mining station near Jupiter, where we had to use chewing gum and prayer. This'll be way more professional." The ship shook again, harder this time. The lights dimmed to emergency levels only. 7 minutes, someone called out. I rolled up my sleeves. "Then I suggest everyone start moving fast and questioning my methods later. Cho, you're with me. Everyone else, I'm going to need some very specific items and you're going to think I'm crazy. But I promise there's a logic here." "What logic?" Cho asked. I grinned, probably looking slightly unhinged in the red emergency lighting. The kind that comes from too much coffee and not enough respect for proper procedure. "Now let's go tape a battleship back together. If you've never had to jury-rig a quantum power core while being shot at by aliens, let me tell you it's not covered in any engineering manual I've ever read, and I've read exactly 0 engineering manuals, which probably explains a lot about my career. I was elbow-deep in a plasma conduit junction, holding a roll of military-grade duct tape in my teeth, and trying to wrap copper wire around a coupling that was radiating enough heat to cook a steak. Lieutenant Cho was standing next to me, holding a flashlight and looking at me like I'd lost my mind. Explain to me again why we're using duct tape on a quantum reactor, she said, her voice tight with stress. Because, I mumbled around the tape, duct tape is a thermal conductor when applied correctly, and right now these conduits are melting because they can't dissipate heat fast enough. The copper wire creates a secondary pathway for the excess energy, and the duct tape holds it in place while providing just enough conductivity to bleed off the thermal load. That sounds insane. It is insane. It's also going to work. I finished wrapping the junction and stood back, wiping sweat from my forehead. The temperature in engineering was approximately surface of the sun degrees. Next conduit. We've got 5 more to do in 4 minutes. The ship rocked again, and I grabbed the railing to steady myself. Somewhere above us, I could hear the muffled sounds of weapons fire. We were still in the fight, which meant Captain Voss was keeping the Krellians busy while I performed emergency surgery on her ship with office supplies. One of the engineers, a guy named Patterson, came running up with an armful of items that looked like he'd raided a hardware store and a kitchen. Mr. Webb, I've got the items you requested. Though I have to ask, why do you need cooking oil and rubber boots? The cooking oil is a temporary lubricant for the heat exchange pistons, I explained, grabbing the bottle. And the rubber boots are because I'm about to do something incredibly stupid and I'd like to not be electrocuted. I poured cooking oil into the heat exchange system, which hissed and steamed, but immediately started moving more smoothly. The quantum core temperature dropped 2 degrees. Not much, but enough to matter. Lieutenant, I need you to go to the captain's quarters and get her favorite coffee mug. Cho stared at me. Her what? Coffee mug, ceramic, should be in her personal quarters. Go now. We're in the middle of a battle and you want me to steal the captain's coffee mug? Borrow. I want you to borrow it. And yes, because ceramic is one of the best thermal insulators we have on this ship, and I need it to wrap around the sensor array so it stops giving false readings to the quantum core. Cho hesitated for exactly half a second, then took off running. I had to admire her commitment to the insanity. Commander Dalton's voice crackled over the intercom. Engineering bridge, what's your status? We need power to shields in 2 minutes or we're done. I grabbed the comm panel. Tell the commander that I'm violating approximately 47 safety regulations, and if we survive this, I'm going to need a really good lawyer. Webb, this is Captain Voss. Can you do this or not? Captain, with all due respect, I haven't failed yet, and I'm not about to start. But I'm going to need everyone on this ship to trust me for exactly 90 more seconds, during which time, things are going to get weird. Weirder than duct taping my power core? So much weirder. Cho came back with the coffee mug, breathing hard. It was a nice mug with Galaxy's Best Captain printed on the side. I felt a little bad about what I was about to do to it. I smashed it into pieces with a wrench. Did you just break the captain's favorite mug? Patterson asked, horrified. I'm repurposing it. I wrapped the ceramic fragments in duct tape, creating a makeshift heat shield, and jammed it into the sensor array housing. The false readings immediately stopped. The quantum core temperature stabilized. Power levels started climbing. It's working, one of the engineers breathed. How is that working? Because physics doesn't care about protocol, I said, pulling off the rubber boots. It just cares about heat, energy, and creative problem solving. Cho, hit the main power relay. She slammed her hand down on the control. Throughout the ship, systems began coming back online. The lights brightened. The hum of the engines deepened to their normal operational tone. Captain Voss's voice came through, and I could hear the smile in it. Engineering bridge. We have shield power. Well done, Mr. Webb. Don't thank me yet, Captain. I've got your ship held together with duct tape, cooking oil, and shattered ceramics. This is temporary. We need to end this fight fast. Understood. Can you get weapons back online? I looked at the weapons control systems. They were completely fried. The circuits melted into slag. Not a chance, I admitted. Your main systems are toast. I'd need a complete rebuild, and we don't have time for that. Then we'll have to make do with shields and engines. I stared at the ruined console, an idea forming in my head. It was stupid. Possibly the stupidest idea I'd ever had, and I once tried to fix a space station using chewing gum. Actually, I said slowly, I might have one more trick up my sleeve, but you're really not going to like it. At this point, Webb, I'm prepared to believe you can work miracles. What do you need? I grinned. I need access to the ship's coffee maker system, and I need it right now. The silence on the bridge was deafening. You ever try to explain to a military captain that you're going to route weapons targeting through an espresso machine? I don't recommend it. The look Captain Voss gave me through the video screen could have curdled milk. Webb, she said with the kind of patience usually reserved for talking to small children or people who've hit their head too many times. Please tell me you did not just ask for access to the ship's coffee system to fix our weapons array. Okay, I won't tell you that. I was already pulling up schematics on a working terminal. But I am going to do it anyway, so maybe just trust the process? Lieutenant Cho was standing behind me, watching as I traced the network pathways through the ship's systems. Mr. Webb, even if the coffee system shares some network infrastructure, it's designed for making beverages. It doesn't have anywhere near the processing power to calculate weapons trajectories. Individually, no, I agreed, typing rapidly. But this ship has coffee makers on every deck, in every mess hall, every officer's quarters, every break room. That's hundreds of individual units, each with its own microprocessor for temperature control, timing, and pressure regulation. Now, those processors aren't powerful by themselves, but if I network them together in parallel, create a distributed computing array, I can use their combined processing power to run targeting calculations. Patterson was looking at me like I'd started speaking in tongues. You want to create a supercomputer out of coffee makers? I want to create a supercomputer out of coffee makers, I confirmed. The quantum processor that normally runs targeting is melted. We need something to replace it. The coffee system is already networked, already has power, and nobody shot at it because who targets coffee makers in a space battle? The Krellians, apparently not strategic thinkers, Cho muttered. Commander Dalton's voice cut through the comm, sharp with frustration. This is insanity. Captain, we cannot entrust our weapon systems to beverage equipment. Commander, unless you have a better idea in the next 60 seconds, we're going with Webb's plan. Captain Voss turned her attention back to me. How long will this take? 15 minutes to network all the systems, another 5 to write the interface code, and probably 30 seconds of prayer that this doesn't blow up in our faces. Literally. You have 10 minutes total. The Krellians are regrouping for another attack run. I cracked my knuckles. Then I'd better type fast. Cho, I need you to manually activate every coffee maker on this ship. Override the standby mode and put them all into active state. She nodded and moved to another terminal. Within seconds, her fingers were flying across the controls. All around the ship, coffee makers that hadn't been used in hours suddenly powered up, ready to brew a pot that would never come. I started writing code. Not elegant code, not the kind that would win any awards, but functional code that could daisy-chain hundreds of simple processors into something that might actually work. The ship's original weapons software was still intact, just orphaned without a processor to run on. I just needed to create a bridge between that software and my improvised computing array. This is either going to be brilliant or catastrophically stupid, Patterson said, watching over my shoulder. Why not both? I replied, not looking up from the screen. The ship shook again. Through the walls, I could hear the thrum of the engines pushing us through evasive maneuvers. Captain Voss was buying me time, dancing a multi-thousand-ton warship through weapons fire like it was a fighter craft. 5 minutes, Cho called out. My fingers were cramping, but the code was coming together. I was routing through coffee maker firmware I'd never even seen before, exploiting backdoors in the network architecture that probably violated a dozen patents, and praying that the thermal regulators in these machines could handle the processing load without overheating. Patterson, I need you to divert cooling systems to the coffee maker network. They're going to run hot. How hot? Very. He moved to comply, and I could hear him muttering about his career choices. The quantum core that I'd jury-rigged with duct tape was holding steady, which was a minor miracle. Now I just needed a second miracle. 3 minutes, Cho said. The last subroutine locked into place. I had successfully networked 417 coffee makers into a distributed weapons computer. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever engineered, and I'd once built a water purification system using sock filters. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Moment of truth. Initializing the network. I hit the execute command. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the weapons control panel started coming back online. System after system flickered to life, running on borrowed processing power from machines designed to make cappuccinos. "We have weapons control," someone on the bridge reported, their voice filled with disbelief. "I don't understand how, but we have weapons control." Captain Voss appeared on the screen again. "Webb, you did it." "Not yet," I warned. "The system is online, but it's fragile. The targeting calculations are going to be slow because I'm running military-grade ballistics software on coffee machine processors. Your gunners are going to need to be patient with the lag time." "How much lag?" I checked the processing speed. "About 3 seconds between target lock and firing solution. In a space battle, that's an eternity." "We'll make it work." Her expression hardened. "All hands prepare for attack run. Weapons target the Krellian flagship." Through the sensors, I could see the enemy fleet regrouping. The flagship, a massive dreadnought that made our battleship look like a toy, was charging up what looked like a planet-killer weapon. They were done playing around. "Captain," I said quietly, "I hope your gunners are really, really good." "So do I, Webb. So do I." Watching a space battle play out on a computer screen in engineering is surreal. You see these little blips representing ships that cost more than some planet's GDP, moving around in what looks like a very expensive and very deadly video game. Except when someone loses, they don't respawn. The Valiant's railgun came online, powered by my duct-taped quantum core and aimed by a network of coffee makers that were probably violating the Geneva Convention in some technical way. Lieutenant Cho and I watched the targeting screen, waiting for the coffee-powered supercomputer to calculate a firing solution. "Target locked," the weapons officer reported from the bridge. "Firing solution in 3, 2, 1, mark." The ship shuddered as the railgun fired. A bolt of superheated metal screamed through space at a significant fraction of light speed, heading straight for the Krellian flagship. It missed by about 300 meters. "Damn it," Captain Voss said with remarkable restraint for someone whose miracle shot just went wide. "Webb, what happened?" I was already analyzing the targeting data. "The processors are struggling with real-time course corrections. The lag time is worse than I calculated. The coffee makers can do the math. They just can't do it fast enough to compensate for both our movement and the target's movement." "Can you fix it?" "Not without better processors, which we don't have." I stared at the screen, watching the Krellian flagship continue charging its weapon. "We've got maybe one more shot before they turn us into particles." Commander Dalton's voice cut in. "All power to forward shields, brace for impact." "Wait," Cho said suddenly. She was looking at the coffee maker interface with an expression I'd seen before on engineers who were about to suggest something crazy. "Mr. Webb, what if we don't try to compensate for movement? What if we overclock the system instead?" "Explain." "The coffee makers have a double shot feature for making extra strong espresso. It doubles the processor speed for short bursts. If we triggered that on all 400 machines simultaneously, we'd have enough processing power to calculate a near-instantaneous firing solution." I stared at her. "That's brilliant. That's also incredibly dangerous. Overclocking that many processors at once could cause cascading failures. The whole network could crash, or worse, the thermal load could cause the quantum core to destabilize again. But would it work?" I ran the numbers in my head. The math was ugly, but it tracked. "Theoretically, yes. We'd have about a 5-second window before the system overheats and crashes. One shot and we'd better make it count." "Captain," I called out, "we have a possible solution, but it's high risk. We overclock the coffee maker network, get one perfect shot, and then the whole system dies. If we miss, we're out of weapons entirely." The bridge was silent for a moment. On the screen, the Krellian flagship's weapon was glowing with building energy. Whatever they were about to shoot at us, it was going to hurt. "Do it," Captain Voss said. "All or nothing." I looked at Cho. "You found the solution? You want to push the button?" She shook her head. "This is your show, Mr. Webb." "Fair enough." I pulled up the override controls for the entire coffee maker network. My finger hovered over the execute command for the double shot protocol. This was possibly the dumbest thing I'd done all day, and the bar was already pretty high. "Bridge, prepare to fire on my mark," I said. "Target the Krellian flagship's main weapon array. You'll have one shot and the firing solution will only be valid for about 2 seconds." "Understood," the weapons officer replied, and I could hear the tension in their voice. I took a deep breath. Somewhere on this ship, 417 coffee makers were about to earn their place in military history or become a cautionary tale in engineering ethics courses. "Execute double-shot protocol," I said, hitting the command. Every coffee maker on the Valiant simultaneously overclocked. The temperature readings spiked immediately. The network processing speed jumped by orders of magnitude. The targeting computer, suddenly fed with more processing power than it knew what to do with, calculated a perfect firing solution in 0.8 seconds. "Fire," Captain Voss ordered. The railgun discharged. Through the sensors, I watched the bolt of superheated metal cross the distance between our ships in what felt like slow motion, but was actually a fraction of a second. The Krellian flagship's shields flared, absorbed some of the impact, but the shot punched through and hit their weapon array directly. The explosion was spectacular. The flagship's main weapon detonated while still charged, creating a cascading chain reaction that ripped through their engineering section. Secondary explosions bloomed across their hull like deadly flowers. Then my improvised weapons system crashed spectacularly. Every coffee maker on the ship shut down simultaneously, their processors fried beyond repair. The quantum core temperature spiked, and I had to manually activate the emergency cooling I'd jerry-rigged earlier. "Flagship is critical," sensors reported. "They're venting atmosphere and losing power. The rest of the Krellian fleet is breaking off, moving to assist." Captain Voss's voice was calm, but I could hear the smile in it. "They're retreating. All ships, hold position. Do not pursue." A cheer went up on the bridge, distant but audible through the comms. We'd won. We'd won with duct tape, coffee makers, and what I'm pretty sure was a war crime against proper engineering. I slumped against the console, suddenly aware of how exhausted I was. Lieutenant Cho was grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." "We survived," I corrected. "Big difference. And now everyone on this ship has to drink terrible coffee because I fried every maker in the fleet." Patterson was laughing, slightly hysterical. "Command is going to have so many questions about the damage report." "Oh, the damage report is going to be amazing," I agreed. "I can't wait to explain why the coffee system needs to be completely replaced and why we use the captain's favorite mug as a heat shield." The ship groaned around us, held together by hope and improvised repairs. But it was holding, and we were alive, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. "Engineering," Captain Voss called. "Report to the bridge when you're able. I think we need to have a conversation about your methods." I groaned. "That sounds ominous." "That sounds like a promotion," Cho said, still grinning. "I don't want a promotion. I want a very large coffee and a very soft bed, in that order. But first, I had to go explain to a military captain how I'd turned her warship into the galaxy's most expensive coffee advertisement. When I finally made it to the bridge, I looked like I'd been dragged through a plasma conduit backwards. My clothes were covered in coffee grounds. There were electrical burn marks on my arms, and I'm pretty sure I had duct tape adhesive in my hair. The bridge crew took one look at me and immediately tried not to laugh. "Mr. Webb, you look terrible." I collapsed into a chair that someone quickly vacated. "Please tell me we're not going to fight anyone else today because I'm fresh out of stupid ideas." "We're secure. The Krellians jumped to FTL as soon as they recovered their flagship. They won't be back anytime soon." She walked over to me, and for a moment, I thought she was going to shake my hand or maybe have me arrested. Instead, she sat down in the chair next to me. "I owe you an apology. I judged you when you came aboard. Cargo shorts, coffee addiction, complete disregard for military protocol. I thought you were a liability." She smiled just slightly. "I was wrong. You saved my ship and my crew using methods I would have never approved if you'd asked permission first. That's why I didn't ask permission. Let the record show that Marcus Webb, civilian consultant, displayed exceptional skill and bravery in the face of enemy action. His unconventional methods resulted in the preservation of this vessel, and the successful repulsion of hostile forces. Commander Dalton, standing nearby, looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Captain, I must note for the record that Mr. Webb violated at least 40 safety protocols, destroyed ship property including your personal coffee mug, and turned our weapon system into a coffee-based computing array. Noted, Commander. That being said, Dalton's not wrong. Closer to 47, but who's counting? I grinned. Are you going to court-martial me? I'm going to do something much worse, she said. I'm going to file a commendation. Every captain in the fleet is going to read about what you did here. You're going to be famous. I groaned. I prefer to work in comfortable obscurity. Would you ever consider taking on an apprentice? I mean, after today, I've learned more about creative engineering than I did in 4 years at the academy. Kid, if you want to learn engineering from me, be prepared for a career of angry calls from safety inspectors and a permanent coffee addiction. I paused, considering. But yeah, if you ever want to leave the military and join the chaos, look me up. She beamed. Patterson, still in engineering monitoring my duct-taped repairs, chimed in over the comms. Mr. Webb, I'm going to have nightmares about your repair methods for years, but I'll admit they worked. Why not both, I replied, which seemed to be my catchphrase for the day. The standard contractor fee plus hazard pay plus a bonus for exceptional service comes to, let me see, approximately 300,000 credits. I sat up straight. That was enough to buy a small ship or a very nice apartment on Mars. I'll accept payment in premium coffee beans, specifically the good stuff from the colonies, and a lifetime guarantee that the Space Force will never, ever call me for anything less than an actual emergency. Done, she said without hesitation. Someone with your skills and complete lack of respect for proper procedure is too valuable to let go. If it's all the same to you, Captain, I'd like to catch the next shuttle back to Earth before something else explodes or someone else attacks. Shuttle's waiting for you in Bay 3. You're welcome, Captain. Try not to get shot at too much, and maybe invest in better coffee makers for next time. As I walked toward the elevator, escorted by Lieutenant Cho, who insisted on seeing me off, I heard Commander Dalton mutter, I'm still filing a report about the protocol violations. You do that, Commander, Captain Voss replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I'm sure it'll make fascinating reading. The shuttle ride back to Earth was blissfully quiet. I dozed most of the way, dreaming about beds and coffee that hadn't been weaponized. When we landed, my communicator was already buzzing with messages. Apparently, word of what had job offers from 3 different engineering firms. There was also a message from an unknown number. Webb, this is Captain Helena Voss. The premium coffee beans are being delivered to your address. 40 kilograms of the finest beans the colonies produce. Also, I've attached your official commendation. You were right about fame being bad for business. Every captain in the fleet now wants you on speed dial. Sorry about that. If you need a reference for that safety inspector, let me know. Voss out. I laughed, standing in the shuttle bay in my ruined clothes, covered in the debris of the most insane day of my career. Somewhere in orbit, a battleship was being held together by duct tape and hope, and I'd apparently become a legend. My communicator buzzed again. Another emergency call, this time from a cargo freighter near Jupiter with engine problems. I stared at it for a long moment, then hit accept. First, do you have duct tape? Second, is your coffee good? Yes, to both. Because apparently, this was my life now. Marcus Webb, civilian engineer, savior of battleships, and the guy who proved that sometimes the best solutions come from the worst ideas. They could keep their medals and their protocol manuals. I had coffee beans, duct tape, and a reputation for fixing the unfixable. And somewhere out there, a Krellian admiral was probably filing a report about how they got beaten by a human with office supplies. I hoped they included that in their history books. As I walked out of the shuttle bay toward the nearest coffee shop, because my thermos was empty, and that was unacceptable, I couldn't help but smile. They called me a civilian like it was an insult. Like it meant I didn't belong in their world of military precision and proper procedure. They were right. I didn't belong. I was the guy who showed up when everything else failed, armed with nothing but caffeine, creativity, and a complete disregard for the word impossible. And honestly, that was the best job description I could ask for.